Hello, everybody. We're back with another episode of reading the whole AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide. Last time we left off right here. We were talking about the beginning of spell explanations. This is on page 40, or 41 rather, of the Dungeon Master's Guide. We'll see how long we go today. At least an hour, maybe 2 hours. We'll see how it goes. If we can find a good stopping off place. Feel free to read along with us. I'll just be going for most of the time. I'll check the chat every once in a while for super chats or any other things like that. But I'll try and just keep going for most of the time. All right. Looks like we're ready to go. How many people we got in here? Ooh, a good 34 people. Sounds good to me. All right, so we're on to spell explanations. So spells, special commentary for refereeing. Some considerations, as well as practicality, make it impossible to give a concise list of each spell herein, with name, level, range, duration, area of effect, and so forth, tabulated and then special notes appended. A playing aid of this sort will likely be done in the not-too-distant future, and that will serve your needs far better than a spread herein. There are, however, quite a number of special notes which you must be appraised of, as spells are often abused by players. The type of magic is given in the Player's Handbook in order that you may creatively develop material regarding spells, new spells, spell components, spell formula, or even limitations due to magical repression, interesting, or other reasons on certain types of spells in some areas. Likewise, specialists can be developed as non-player characters, basing their abilities around the type of magic involved. In short, the type of magic involved in the casting of each spell is there to give you flexibility and a foundation for creativity. Spell components for a spell are generally used when the spell is cast. Exceptions are holy, unholy symbols, druid's mistletoe, etc. Commentary regarding certain spells follows. Be certain to read all of the material and to have it at hand whenever a spell user casts a spell for which special considerations are noted. Cleric spells. First level spells. Detect evil. Basically the degree of evil, faint, moderate, strong, overwhelming, and its general nature, expectant, malignant, gloating, etc., can be noted. If the evil is overwhelming, the general bent, lawful, neutral, chaotic, has a 10% chance per level of the cleric being detectable. Detect magic. Only the fact that a dim or strong magic exists can be found by clerics. Magic user spell of the same. Oh, see also magic user spell of the same name. We also have light. It should be noted that if this spell is cast upon the visage or before the visual organs of a creature, it will tend to blind it, rather as if a strong light were placed before its eyes. And its attacks and defenses will be a -4 on 2 hit, saving throws, and even armor class. Note also that the spell is not mobile, although it can be cast upon a movable or mobile object or creature. Protection from evil. Note that this excludes, keeps out, monsters using natural body weapon attacks which require touching the protected character. So actually the light spell is interesting because looking at 5th edition, I believe you have to touch something in order to cast light on it. Whereas I think in early D&D, if I'm not mistaken, it was a ranged spell. So it was actually a pretty effective offensive weapon, where if a monster was attacking you, you could cast it on its eyes and blind it. This seems like it's not really a tactic that works as well in 5th edition. 2nd level spells. Augury. This is a general future determinant with only a half-hour maximum, so you need not be too exacting with regard to your vagueness. When the augury is cast, simply compare the knowledge you have and give the character general impressions of the question asked. Will we do well if we venture into the 3rd level? Answer: those who survive will be rich. Basis: you have a terrible troll near where the character will enter the level, if he does, but the probable party is strong enough to beat it after a hard fight, and the monster guards 10,000 silver pieces and a +1 shield. Detect Charm. Charm spells cast by creatures entitle the charmee to a saving throw versus magic, and if the save is successful, the Detect Charm spell does not pick up the fact that the charm exists. Find Traps. This spell will be 10% likely per level of the cleric casting it to be able to find the type of magic involved, so alteration, divination, etc., if it is a magical or magically concealed trap. Silence, 15-foot radius. If this spell is cast at a magic-resistant creature, and the resistance works, silence does not encompass the creature. Turning of this spell, in whole or in part, will negate its effects, save for a muting sound if it is turned beyond its radius. Snake Charm. This spell will be effective against any Ophidian or Ophidianoid monster, such as a Naga and Coatl. Of course, hit point restrictions, resistance to magic, and saving throws apply at all times. Speak with Animals. This spell will not necessarily make the animal type being conversed with the good and true friend of the cleric. The spell will not necessarily make the animal type being conversed with, the true and good friend of the cleric. So terseness and evasiveness are likely in basically hostile and reasonably intelligent creatures. The more stupid ones will make inane comments too. Remember to assume the role of an animal with the appropriate mentality and viewpoint. Third level spells. Animate Dead. It is, of course, possible to animate the skeletons or corpses of demi-human and humanoid, as well as human sort. If creatures with more than a basic 1 hit die, or 1+ hit die, are so animated, the number of such skeletons or zombies will be determined in hit dice rather than total numbers. Thus, a cleric of 6th level could animate 6 skeletons of human or humanoid sort, which in life had less than 2 hit dice. 3 such undead, which in life had less than 3, but 2 or more hit dice, or a single undead creature which had 6 but less than 7 hit dice. For each such additional hit die, the skeleton or zombie will gain another die. Thus, the animated skeleton of a fire giant, an 11 hit die monster, is 10 over the norm for a skeleton normally animated. So it would have a 1 + 10 hit dice, 11d8. Likewise, a fire giant zombie would have 10 dice over and above the sort of creature typically made into a zombie. So it would have 2 + 10 hit dice, 12d8. This does not enable a cleric to make skeletons or zombies of characters of 2nd or higher level have more hit dice. Such undead are simply human skeletons or zombies with 1 or 2 hit dice, nothing more. Continual Light. As does a light spell, this will tend to blind a creature if it is placed on its visual sensory area. The spell can also be placed upon a smallish object, and a light-proof case subsequently used to encase the object so as to make it dark until the covering is removed, i.e. a continual light source which expends no fuel and will not blow out. Darkness spells are the bane of this device. Cure Blindness. This spell will not restore lost visual organs, whether such cause is due to injury or disease. Thus, at your option, the spell can simply remove magical blindness and cure disease or disease-like conditions such as cataracts and glaucoma and various forms of nearsightedness, farsightedness, or astigmatisms common to human eyes. Or it can be effective against other eye disorders as well, save those noted above. Dispel Magic. If this spell is cast upon a magic item, it most certainly will have the effect of causing it to be non-operational for 1 round thereafter if the item does not make a saving throw. If the item is not in the possession of any creature, then the item gets no saving throw, and it is non-operational for 1 round. Note that artifacts and relics are not subject to this effect. Any dispel magic spell must be cast directly at the object, not anything or anyone else, to be so effective. Actually, I'm not totally sure what the difference between an artifact and a relic and a magic item is. I'm sure there's a distinction there that I'm just not aware of. Glyph of Warding. If a cleric is on hand to determine that a glyph of warding is certainly in existence, an associated magic user can thereafter use an erase spell, and possibly 50% plus 2% per level of the magic user, remove the glyph. As to the design and the names of glyphs of warding, design your own or use an encyclopedia to find interesting alphabets to use. You may also refer to the World of Greyhawk for other runes and glyphs. For example, here is one such series of glyphs named. There's some pictures down here. One for fire, fa, lightning, le, cold, ka, blind, be, paralysis, pe, drain plus, or energy plus drain, iha, do. Interesting. So I guess he developed something of a conlang, or at least symbols for Greyhawk. As a detect trap spell, we'll see the form of the glyph. A cleric might believe he or she knows the name of the glyph from past experience and try to bypass it, probably with success. Locate object. This spell will not enable the caster to find a general class of objects unless the form is nearly the same as that of the majority of others in its class. Thus, stairs have risers and are generally similar. So by means of the spell, the caster would be able to locate a flight which closely resembles those he or she pictured in casting the locate object spell. However, attempting to find jewelry or a crown or the like requires a certain mental image. And if the image is not generally similar to the desired objects within range, the spell will not work, for the image is not familiar/similar to that of the real. In short, desired but unique objects cannot be located by this spell unless they are similar to objects known by the caster. Prayer. If a prayer spell is uttered while another cleric of the same deity is chanting, the effect of the two spells are cumulative, i.e. +2 for friendly creatures, -2 for foes. Note that the two spells must be cast by clerics of the same religious persuasion, not merely the same general alignment, and that the chant must be in progress while the prayer is read. Speak with dead. This spell is often subject to abuse due to too liberal DMing. When the cleric asks questions, follow these rules. 1. Give answers which are brief. 2. Take all questions absolutely literally. And 3. Be as evasive as possible if the questioned creature was not friendly to the characters or class or alignment of the spellcaster when it lived. Remember, speaking with the dead assumes that the creature has an essence which still exists somewhere. And if it can remember answers to questions, it can remember other things as well. 4th level spells. Detect lie. This Dwemer does not reveal the truth, nor will it necessarily reveal evasions of the truth. It empowers the caster to detect a lie. 5th level spells. Atonement. As the all-in-all of the campaign milieu, you must assume the role of the supernatural powers, judging the character making atonement. If the action appears to be very sincere, then the deity will be prone to allow atonement by means of the spell, with little or no sacrifice, in addition, according to the deity's overall nature. So that could mean a few coins in the poor box, or a major quest for a relic. The less sincere the character, the greater will be the actions required to complete the spell. I.e., a hollow voice rings forth and commands, "Go forth from here, and return not until you bring captive the high priest of Osiris, and all of the altar service of his temple as sacrifices to me in token of the sincerity of your true repentance." And that will be the final word from that deity until the deed is accomplished. Commune. The questions permitted must be asked consecutively, as brief a period as possible, as there is too much bother and disturbance for the supernatural powers otherwise. If the spellcaster lags or goes off to do anything else, the spell is broken, over and done with. Note that it is possible for a deity to answer, "I don't know," as most deities are not omniscient. Plane shift. The material components is similar to a tuning fork, of course, and striking it at the proper time allows the energy vibrations of the person or persons or creatures involved to match those of the desired plane. All you need to do is determine which notes, if you will, attune to which planes, and then when the caster has a metal rod, inform him or her of the note it sounds, An A sharp, for instance, might take one to the astral plane, while an A flat will move one to the elemental plane of air, and an A to the ethereal plane. Naturally, you can include the octave and even have chords to move a creature of some subplane. F sharp minor might move the caster or the subject to the 9th plane of hell. That's really fun. That's a great little piece of world building right there. I wish it actually fleshed this out with a whole bunch of all the musical tones and how they corresponded to all the different planes. That's really fun. Players who are into music would get a lot of enjoyment out of that. And it's also fun in the way that it incorporates material components in a way that's frequently ignored. I mean, no one really pays attention to that today. And I get the feeling that even back in early editions of D&D, people didn't pay that much attention to material components. I could be wrong, but they're just kind of a bother. It's a lot to track. Quest. If the person quested agrees to a task, even though this agreement might have been gained by force or trickery, then any chance of avoiding the quest, the saving throw, is negated. Those of the same religion as the cleric are not able to avoid a just and deserved quest either. And even those of the same alignment have to undertake a just and proper quest. Having to undertake a just and proper quest must have a -4 if they wish to avoid it. A quest can be negated by a cleric of greater level than the one which placed the spell, if the cleric so doing is of the same religion as the quested creature. Some artifacts or relics can probably negate the spell, and any deity can do so, but only directly. 6th level spells. Aerial Servant. The spellcaster should be required to show you what form of protective inscription he or she has used when the spell is cast. The 3 forms mentioned are Magic Circle, Pentagram, or Thaumaturgic's Triangle. Blade Barrier. This spell is absolutely stationary. It does not move in any way except with respect to the circling of the blades around a fixed point of the spell center. The plane of rotation of the blades can be horizontal, vertical, or anything in between, however. Note that creatures within the area of the barrier, when it is invoked, are entitled to a saving throw, and if the save is made, the blades are avoided and no damage is taken. Matt asks, is this what old school essentials base their advanced rules on? Yes, I think so. Or this was the inspiration for them. So a lot of the rules in here were adapted to fit better with basic D&D or Moldvay D&D. So this is the inspiration for that. Obviously, this is vastly more verbose and detailed than anything that you're going to see in old school essentials. So they really boiled things down. Not much of this either. So this is mostly DM advice. They were mostly taking things like monsters, magic items, classes, and things like that. Conjure animals. For the list of these creatures, see Appendix L, Conjured Animals. Find the path. This spell is subject to the same sort of abuse as Locate Object spell is. A locale is not an object. The spell will enable the caster to find a way into or out of some area, but this area must be known or identified in itself, not for what it might house. Thus, one could use it to find a great forest of ash trees, but not to find a forest where a green dragon lived. In the latter case, the desire is to find an object, not an area or locale. Similarly, use of a Find the Path spell to locate the way to a hoard of platinum pieces is absolutely useless, as it must not be allowed, but the spell could be used to find a level known to have such a hoard of coins, or a cavern with a pool in it, might be pointed to, etc. The spell finds a way to a locale or an area, and whatever objects are therein are not meaningful to the spell. Heal. This spell will not cure serious forms of mental disorders not related to spells or inflicted by injury to the brain. Word of Recall. For each plane that the cleric is removed from the plane of his or her designated sanctuary, there is a 10% cumulative chance that the cleric will be irrevocably lost in the intervening astral or ethereal spaces. 7th level spells. Astral Spell. Any magic item can go into the astral plane, but most will become non-magical therein, or on any planes removed from the prime material plane. Those which contain spells which you can determine will function on any given plane will function on that plane. Armor and weapons, which are +3 or better, might also function on other planes, but this is at your option. That's interesting. So you can kind of nerf powerful swords and armor. All artifacts and relics should be allowed to function anywhere. Items which draw their power from a particular plane will be likely to be far more powerful on the plane from whence their power comes, e.g. a ring of fire resistance on the elemental plane of fire, or a sword of life-stealing on the negative material plane. For creatures encountered, see Appendix C, random monster encounters, astral and ethereal encounter tables. Control weather. To find the prevailing conditions at the time the spell is cast, you must know the climate and the season, of course. Sky conditions, cloudy, foggy, partly cloudy, clear, precipitation, wind speed and direction, and temperature must be determined according to the area. Knowing this, you should have no problem informing the would-be spellcaster as to what sort of weather exists. Earthquake. Structures very solidly built, with foundations reaching to bedrock, will sustain half damage. Castles so built will take only 1/4 damage if they score above 50% on a saving throw roll. An earth elemental in the spell area has the effect of negating 10% to 100% of the spell effects. D10, 0 equals 100%. If the elemental is of forces opposed to the cleric casting the earthquake spell. Gate. Unless you have some facts regarding the minions serving the being called forth by the casting of the gate spell, it is necessary to have the being called come. Then, if it is a trifle, it can leave or attack. If it is of middling importance, it can take some positive action to set matters right, and then demand appropriate repayment. And if the matter is urgent, it can act accordingly and ask whatever it wants thereafter, if appropriate. However, Asmodeus might send a pit fiend to see what the problem was, and some deity of lawful good might send a Ki Rin on the same mission. As to the likelihood of the gated being returned without doing something, use a factor of 20% for a trifling matter, 15% of return if the fare is of medial importance, and from 1% to 50% if the matter is very urgent. 1% indicating that the being finds itself well able to handle the situation and everything pleases or displeases it greatly. 50% if the situation would be risky and it is displeased. Thus, Asmodeus summoned by a party of chaotic good characters to save them from a type 6 demon could be a trifle to an important act, depending on what was involved, such as a relic of lawful evil. Asmodeus would certainly do away with the summoners as well as the demon if at all possible. On the other hand, Asmodeus summoned to pit himself against Bahamut would be very likely to turn and do a speedy exit, unless the matter was of critical importance to hell. Holy/unholy word. The speaker must be from the plane upon which it speaks. The speaker must be from the plane upon which it speaks in order to have the utterance send other creatures to their own plane. That's a confusing sentence. I.e., a devil on the prime material plane could not use the spell to send away anything, although it could do so if it were in hell. Creatures sent to the original plane cannot return for 1 day. Creatures slowed by such a spell lose their first round of attack and each odd-numbered round of attack thereafter until the duration of the effect wears off. Restoration. This spell will cure any and all forms of insanity. So you need that for curing insanity, but heal will not work for that. Druid spells. First level spells. Detect magic. Only the fact that a dim or a strong magic exists in the area will be noted. Locate animals. This spell is another which requires a bit of effort on the part of the DM, as it is quite unlikely that each and every species of animal in the area of the spellcaster will be recorded. You will have to use the probabilities of your milieu. Obviously, there is a 0% chance of locating a polar bear in the jungle or a jungle cat in a cavern thousands of feet below ground, etc. So the locale is second after the region as to whether or not some animal will be within spell range. Then consider the terrain. Mountain lions do not typically roam the prairies, for instance. Lastly, consider the frequency of the animal desired in relation to all of the above. If the animal is within the area of probability, allow a straight percentile rule for frequency. Common equals 50% chance, uncommon 25% chance, rare 10% chance, very rare 5% chance. Circumstances will always prevail, so modify as necessary to allow for the surroundings. Speak with animals. As noted for the spell, the cleric spell of the same name, this magic will not make the animal altogether friendly and cooperative. Oh, I'm glad to see people are still keeping track of the number of milieu references that Gary makes. That is his favorite word, after all. Second level spells. Animal friendship. This spell will only function if the druid actually wishes to be the animal's friend. If the druid has ulterior motives, the animals will always sense it. Charm person or mammal. If at the same time the spell is cast, the subject is struck by any spell, missile, or weapon which inflicts damage, the creature will make its saving throw at +1 per point of damage sustained. Naturally, this assumes damage is inflicted by members of the spellcaster's party. Remember that a charmed creature's or person's priorities are changed as regards the spellcaster, but the charmed one's basic personality and alignments are not. The spell is not enslave person or mammal. A request that a charmee make itself defenseless or that he, she, it be required to give up a valued item or cast a valuable spell or use a charge on a valued item, especially against the charmee's former associates or allies, could allow an immediate saving throw to see if the charm is thrown off. In like manner, a charmed figure will not necessarily tell everything he, she, it knows or draw maps of an entire area. A charmed figure can refuse a request if such refusal is in character and will not directly cause harm to the charmer. Also, a charm spell does not substantially alter the charmee's feelings toward the charmer's friends and allies. The charmed person or creature will not react well to the charmer's allies making suggestions like, ask him this question. The charmee is oriented towards friendship and acceptance of the charmer, but this does not mean that he, she, it will put up with verbal or physical abuse from the charmer's associates. Create water. It is not possible to create water within living material, i.e., it is not possible to cast a spell upon a creature and create liquid in any part of its body. That's great, because you know someone's done that, right? So many of these little spell tweaks are very clearly Gary getting upset that someone has used a spell in a way that he didn't like, and he's trying to fix it. To be fair, I mean, that would make create water extremely powerful if you could make it inside creatures. Feign death. The recipient of this duomer, I love how he just occasionally uses duomer. He just kind of throws that word in there. That's usually just called spells, but just he sprinkles some duomers in there. It consumes air at 1/100th of the normal rate. Any poison within the system of the spell recipient is effectively slowed so as to cause no harm whatsoever for the duration of the spell. Oh, that's really neat. So basically it puts you into a hibernation coma. So you could use that for all sorts of interesting reasons. Fire trap. The spell can be removed, negated by a dispel magic as is normal. Heat metal. Elephant chainmail is not subject to this spell. All ferrous-based magic armor is entitled to have a saving throw versus magical fire. If the save is successful, the heat metal spell does not affect it. Locate plants. For the likelihood of any given plant type to be within the area of the spell, consult the foregoing discussion regarding the spell Locate Animals. It will generally be more difficult to adjudicate matters botanical, however, as the distribution of plant species is not as widely known as that of animals. As a result, most herbs will grow only in temperate regions, most spices in tropical regions. If you have never heard of the plant, assume it is rare or very rare, and give appropriate percentages. Kevin says that it's pronounced Dwimmer. Well, that's good to know. Obscurement. A gust of wind spell will cause the vapor to swirl and dissipate in 25% of the normal time, so that instead of the obscurement lasting for 4 rounds per level, it will last for but 1 round per level, once the gust of wind has been cast, of course. Produce flame. If the druid chooses to hurl the flame, treat it as a missile, but any target considered to be at short range. Any target is considered to be at short range. If a miss occurs, use the grenade-like missile principle to determine where the flame strikes. What is the grenade-like missile principle? Does he talk about that somewhere else? I don't know. Warp wood. Attempting to affect the wood of a magically held or wizard-locked door is another matter. The level of the druid is compared to the level of the magic user, and only if the latter is of lower level than the former will the spell have any chance of working. For each level of experience greater than the magic user, the druid has a 20% chance of warping dwimmered wood. Third level spells. Call lightning. If a djinn or an air elemental is on hand to form a whirlwind, the druid is able to summon half-strength lightning strokes therefrom. Snare. The material of the noose can be cut with any magical blade, or a non-magical sharp instrument with a 2-hit bonus of +2 or better. Summon insects. If thick smoke or hot flames are near the area or near the target creatures, the insects called forth will not go near the intended victim. Those who might be considered dazed or burned, those who might are considered dazed or burned to a crisp. The spell thus fails. Likewise, if the victim steps into such an area, all insects are gone that instant, so the next round it may act normally. Tree. Note that the druid can appear as a conifer, bush, etc. The armor class of such a tree is that of the druid, and its hit points are likewise those of a druid. Fourth level spells. Animal Summoning 1. For probable animals in the area, see the foregoing commentary on Locate Animals. The animals typically summonable are apes, badgers, giant, baboons, black bears, badgers, just normal badgers, I suppose, giant beavers. What else we got here? Wild boars, wild camels, wild dogs, herd animals, jackals, giant lizards, giant rams, spitting snakes, dire wolves, warthogs and boars, wild cattle, giant eagles, wild horses, jaguars, giant lynxes, giant rats, giant weasels, wolverines, bulls, normal crocodiles, giant goats, hyenas, leopards, giant owls, poisonous snakes, and wolves. Now, I just noticed now that I'm supposed to read it across in that direction. That's not intuitive, Gary. You should make things in lists. These are summonable. Some of them are summonable by only a specific type of animal. Oh, I see. Herd animals. You have to pick what kind of herd animal you want to summon. You will notice that animals with 4+N hit dice are included. If the druid names such an animal type, allow summoning if otherwise indicated, but limit the number appearing to 1 to 3. Call woodland being. These sorts of creatures are the type which should generally be indicated on map areas as to location and numbers. However, if by chance you are faced with the problem of a druid casting this spell where such information is not at hand, use the following random percentage possibilities. We have a table here with the type of creature that you want to call and the type of woodland. Interesting. So with different types of woodlands, you're going to have different chances of calling centaurs versus unicorns, for example. So unicorns basically only show up in moderate or dense woodlands. Dispel magic. Oh, sorry. Add 1% per level of the druid casting the spell, except where it's 0%. Check in order for each type by rolling percentage dice, and if at the end of a list nothing is indicated, there are no woodland beings within spell range. For example, a 10th level druid begins the spell in a sylvan wood. There is a 30% chance for brownies, but the dice roll shows 35, so none come. Then a 40% chance for centaurs gets a dice score of 72, but finally a 35% chance for dryads gets a dice roll of 10, and so 1 to 4 dryads will come. Since the call was successful, no further checks are made. Interesting. So you always go down in order. I suppose that makes sense. I think they kind of get more powerful as you go down, because you do have unicorns and treants at the end. Dispel magic. See the comments on the cleric spell of the same name for effects of the spell upon them. Hallucinatory forest. Touching the illusory, that's the word, growth will neither inform the individual as to its nature, nor will it affect the magic. Huh. So it's a hallucinatory forest, and it is an illusion, but you can't tell it's fake by touching it. That seems unusual for an illusion. Matt asks if I ever reviewed Index Card RPG. No, I have not reviewed that one yet. It does look really interesting, though. There are some similarities between it and Knave that people have pointed out, so that could be an interesting one to look at. Kinder says that I've inspired them with an older video to run Hot Springs Island for my new D&D group starting tomorrow. Very cool. That is a really cool book. 5th level spells. Transmute rock to mud. Rate of sinking is 1 foot per segment, i.e. 1 foot per 6 seconds, or 10 feet per minute round. Brush thrown upon the surface will stop sinking of creatures able to climb atop it. Use discretion as to the amount of brush and the weight of the creatures. Ropes can be used to pull creatures out of the mire, assuming that sufficient power is available. 1 man per man, 10 men per horse, or vice versa. Wall of fire. It is not possible for the spellcaster to move at all and maintain concentration on the wall of fire. 6th level spells. Anti-animal shell. Ooh, I haven't even heard of this spell. Most of these are familiar, but every once in a while an AD&D spell surprises me. This shell is non-mobile. Humans, even though able to use magic, are non-magical, as are dwarves, elves, etc. So does it affect humans? I suppose so. Maybe it says in the original spell description. Conjure fire elemental. A holy/unholy word will send any elemental back to its plane. Fire seeds. As with missiles of the type produced by a produce flame spell, all of fire seed missiles are considered to be short range, and misses are handled as described in the grenade-like missiles subsection of combat. There it is, grenade-like missiles. It's back again. Apparently, it's in a section called combat. It'd been nice to have him say that before when we were reading that. So there's very just sporadic references to where you can find things. Turn wood. Even magical weapons with wooden sections will be turned. An anti-magic shell will protect from this spell, and a dispel magic will have normal chances of wiping out its effects. Wall of Thorns. Dexterity bonus to armor class is not considered in this case. If a wall of fire results from the burning of the thorns, the side towards the druid will be the non-harmful one. 7th level spells. Chariot of Sustar. Sustar? This vehicle and its seeds are from the elemental plane of fire. Therefore, they are subject to forced return to this plane, such as by dispel magic, holy/unholy word, etc. Conjure earth elemental. As noted regarding fire elementals, a holy/unholy word will send the creature back to its own plane. Firestorm. The reverse, fire quench, will cause a flame tongue, flaming, sword to be extinguished unless it makes a successful saving throw versus a crushing blow. Once extinguished thus, the weapon becomes non-magical. Reincarnation. Regardless of the form of the creature in which the character is reincarnated, allow the new form to progress as far as possible in characteristics and abilities. For example, a badger character could grow to giant size, have maximum hit points, plus bonus points for a high constitution, and the intelligent level of its former character. A centaur reincarnation might eventually gain hit dice up to 5, 6, 7, or even 8, and it would be eligible to wear armor, use magic items, etc. I think I mentioned this in a previous video, but I randomly ran into a comment on the comment section of a whole different website that had posted about me making these videos. And the commenter said that they were the person that compiled and edited this. And that they were just like a 20-something new hire that Gary had hired to, cobble all of his notes together. And so that's how it happened. Fil Kearney just says that this book feels like it was only copy edited, not technical developmental edited. Yeah, there wasn't really any intense editing that went into this. Apparently, Gary just had giant piles of pages, and you just had to kind of put it together. Magic user spells. So first level spells, Charm Person. Attacks causing damage upon the subject person will cause a saving throw bonus of +1 per hit point of damage sustained in that round that the charm is cast. Comprehend languages. The reverse, confuse languages, can be cast upon a scroll to make it unreadable, but a second comprehend language spell will then succeed. Detect magic. The spell detects the intensity of the magic, dim, faint, moderate, strong, very strong, intense, and there is a 10% chance per level of the caster that the type, abjuration, alteration, etc., can be found as well. Although if a dual type, the detection percentage applies to both and must be rolled for separately. Enlarge. All garments and equipment worn by a subject of this spell should be considered to automatically drop off if held by straps or fasteners, otherwise to split away during growth. So it is not possible to squeeze someone to death in their armor by means of an enlarge. Aww, that's disappointing. That's a really cool use of enlarge that I hadn't thought of. Material components possessed will not change size. Coats of mail, however, will be ruined if growth occurs while worn. Note that you can opt to make a target wearing objects an impossible task for an enlarge spell, unless the creature is actually touched, so as to distinguish the creature from the objects. Erase. This spell might be useful against a glyph of warding. Find familiar. If the magic user opts to send away a familiar, he or she may never again find another until the former is killed or dies. Purposely killing or causing to be killed a familiar, or a former familiar, is most likely to find great disfavor with the gods, assuming, of course, that this pertains to the magic user and his or her associated familiar. Note that spell duration concerns the finding of the familiar. Once it is found, the familiar will serve until killed. To determine animal availability, see the 4th level druid spell, Animal Summoning 1. The cartoon down here. One false move, wizard, and your familiar gets it. That's fine. Is that soldier holding a gun? Nope, that's an axe. It's an axe. Wouldn't surprise me, though. There was a lot of science fantasy in some early D&D. Light. This spell can effectively blind an opponent, as noted under the commentary in the cleric spell of the same name. Message. This is not a tongue spell, and speech will be as normal for the spellcaster. Protection from evil. This spell prevents attacks which employ parts of the body of affected creatures. Cf. Cleric spell of the same name. Sleep. Unless a single creature is designated as the target of a sleep spell in a mixed group, the sleep spell will first affect the lowest level hit dice targets. Tensor's floating disc. The caster cannot ride on the disc. The disc always follows the magic user. Another very disappointing ruling from Gary here, since riding on the disc is clearly why you would want to cast that disc in the first place. That's what I tried to do the minute I first cast Tensor's floating disc. Unseen servant. The created force has no shape, so it cannot be clothed. Right. Ink for use with this spell is only 10% likely to be located at any given apothecary/alchemist in a town, or double that for a city. Ink will come in a flask, which will be sufficient to inscribe 2 to 4 spells. The cost will be 200 to 500 gold pieces. You should devise whatever formula for manufacture of this substance you desire. Ichor of Slithering Tracker, Octopus Ink, and Powdered Gems are a fair place to start from. This ruling for Unseen Servant is also very disappointing. In my current game, I'm in a 5th edition game at the moment, and I have an Unseen Servant that I use pretty frequently, and it's a real bummer if the GM said that I was not allowed to put clothes on it. Second level spells. Detect Evil. The magic detects only the intensity of the evil. See cleric spell of the same name. Invisibility. See the invisibility section under the adventure. Locate object. See the cleric spell of the same name for complete commentary. Rope trick. This is now my favorite spell. I use this all the time. My wizard is a utility wizard, and so whenever the party keeps getting into weird situations, I just pull out weird, obscure spells that somehow get us out of it, and rope trick has come in handy more than one time. Rope trick. Those climbing the rope and gaining the safety of the extra-dimensional space are able to see out of it clearly, as if they were observing through a window of about 3 foot width and 5 foot height. Those outside cannot see in. Stinking cloud. A gust of wind spell will blow this away in 1 round after contact. If it is cast in a place where there is considerable air movement, the stinking cloud will move in the direction of the air current at from 1 inch to 6 inches per round, depending on airspeed. For each 1 inch of such movement, shorten its duration by 1 round. Webb. If this spell is cast without 2 firm anchoring places, the webs will collapse and entangle themselves, effectively negating the spell. Let's see, the comments here says, everyone wants a Tensor's disc to ride. Yeah, that's right. I just want to float around on my floating disc. Like, you're a much cooler wizard if you can do that, right? Just glide into a room on an invisible platform. It's awesome. Why can't everyone do that? Wizard lock. The caster can always pass through his or her own wizard locked portal freely. 3rd level spells. Dispel magic. For the effects of this spell on a magic item, see the cleric spell of the same name. Feign death. For the rate of air consumption and effects on poisoning, see the cleric spell of the same name. Gust of wind. This spell is particularly useful against such spells as Obscurement, Stinking Cloud, and Cloud Kill. Lightning bolt. Note that physical damage is not exceptional, so that if a solid wall is struck, the bolt effectively rebounds its full remaining distance. If it strikes a barrier, which is shattered/broken, through by the force of the stroke, then the bolt continues beyond. So I think this is a ruling that people often don't use today, but which is a lot of fun. Because if you miss with a lightning bolt, then it starts bouncing around the room and it can like fry multiple people, or at least it becomes a hazard to everybody, which is a lot of fun. There's just more chaos there with your spells. Monster Summoning 1. For a list of monster summons, see Appendix M, Summon Monsters. Phantasmal Force. The magic user must know of and understand the force/creature he/she is making an illusion of. Thus, if the caster has never cast a fireball or has never seen a dragon turtle, his illusion of such will be very poor. That's reasonable. Protection from evil, 10-foot radius. As heretofore noted, this spell prevents use of body weaponry by affected creatures. 4th level spells. Charm Monster. It is needful to point out that this spell does not suddenly empower the caster or his or her associated characters with any special means of communication. If the caster is unable to convey to the charmed creature his or her intentions, then the monster will simply refrain from harming the spellcaster and the others in the area, if any. The others in the area, if any, will be subject to its attentions, hostile or otherwise. Similar to a charm person spell, if damage is inflicted on the charmee at the same time, round, as the spell is cast, then the saving throw is made at +1 for each point of damage so inflicted. Dig. This spell will last 5 to 20 hit points of damage. The spell will inflict 5 to 20 hit points of damage if cast upon a clay golem. That's a very specific rule, but kind of cool. Extension 1. This spell must be cast after the spell to be extended, whether by another spell user during the same round or the initial spellcaster or another immediately preceding the casting of the extension. If a round elapses, the extension goes for naught. Fire Trap. A Dispel magic has the possibility stated to remove the fire trap. If it fails to do so, the trap is not affected and is not triggered. Minor Globe of Invulnerability. The globe gives off a faint shimmering when it forms. 3rd level spells from devices, fireballs or lightning, for example, will not penetrate its sphere. Monster Summoning 2. For a list of monster summons, see Appendix M, Summoned Monsters. Polymorph Other. As is continually pointed out, henchmen and hirelings will not desire to be subjected to the effects of the spell You can't just like hire people and then polymorph them into whatever you want. Furthermore, level of experience is not part of a character's form, so it is quite foolish and totally impossible to attempt to polymorph a creature into a nth level character. Of course someone would try and do that. That's funny. Likewise, profession is not form, so attempting to polymorph into a fighter, thief, etc. results in human form and nothing more. Shape changers, lycanthropes, deities, druids, vampires, certain dragons, jackal-wearers, doppelgangers, mimics, et al. Will be affected for but one round, then will return to their original form. Oh, very interesting. That's a fun rule. That's just less effective against people that can already change form. Rary's Mnemonic Enhancer. When this is used to gain additional lower level spells, the magic user must then memorize the spells and equip himself or herself with the required components. Wizard Eye. The ocular device, magically formed, has substance, and it has form which might be detected. See invisibility. Solid objects prevent the passage of a wizard eye, although it can pass through a space no larger than a small mouse hole, about 1/2 inch diameter. Fifth level spells. Animate Dead. See the cleric spell of the same name for a detailed commentary. Cloud Kill. The caster is able to cast this spell so that it forms around him or her, if this is desired. However, any creature staying within the cloud for more than one round, even if they have 7 or more hit dice / levels, will take 1 to 10 hit points of damage on the second and each succeeding round. Conjure Elemental. See the cleric spell Aerial Servant for details of protective inscriptions. Contact Other Plane. See the section on Insanity. How good is the index in this book? Because he does have references to other sections, but I often wonder if you can look this stuff up very easily. Oh, okay, yeah. He has Insanity in the index. That's good. Extension 2. See Extension 1 above. Leomund's Secret Chest. For a list of random creatures which might come from the ethereal plane, please see Appendix C, Random Monster Encounters. Monster Summoning 3. For a list of monsters summoned, see Appendix M, Summoned Monsters. Transmute Rock to Mud. For commentary, see the Druid spell of the same name. Wall of Force. A Rod of Cancellation or a Sphere of Annihilation will bring down the Wall of Force, the former being used fully in the process, and the latter drawing any and all small objects into its vortex in the process. Small objects are those weighing less than 100 gold pieces and within 1 inch radius of the sphere. The diamond dust for the spell must be equivalent of stones of not less than 10,000 gold pieces value. Wall of Iron. If the Wall of Iron is created vertically, there is a 50% chance either way for it falling left or right, ahead or backwards, depending on its placement. It would take not less than 30 strength points with at least 400 pounds of mass to affect this probability, and then only 1% for each pound over 300 or strength point over 30. If the caster concentrates specially, it is possible to double the area by halving the thickness. That makes a lot of sense, though it's not totally clear what it means by concentrating specially. No real rules for that part. Wall of Stone. Any use of the wall as a bridge must be arched and buttressed. This will require 50% of the total volume of the wall, so a 20th level magic user normally may create 400 square feet in surface area 5 feet thick. To use it as a bridge, only 200 square feet can be considered, so a span 5 feet wide and 40 feet long could be made, assuming the chasm to be bridged was about 38 feet wide. Unsupported spans will automatically collapse of their own weight if over 20 feet across. 6th level spells. Anti-Magic Shell. It must be pointed out that creatures on their own plane are normal creatures, so this spell cast upon the elemental plane of fire, for example, would hedge out none of the creatures of the plane. Control Weather. For commentary on this spell, see the cleric spell of the same name. Death Spell. Creatures with less than 1 hit die count as only half of a creature which otherwise has less than 2 hit dice. If such creatures are subjected to the spell, count them off thusly, although the maximum number affected cannot exceed 80 in any event. Enchant as item. When casting the permanency spell on an item, the magic user need only roll 2 or better with d20 to avoid loss of a constitution point. Formula for magic items are suggested under Fabrication of Magic Items. Extension 3. See Extension 1. I always forget how to pronounce this word. Geese? Something like that. The casting time is also the total time the magic user has to word the geese spell. It is otherwise similar to a quest. Glassy. The strength of the glassy area is the same as that of the original material. Monster Summoning 4. For a list of monsters summoned, see Appendix M, Summoned Monsters. Move Earth. The practical limitation on the area of effect of this spell is a 24-foot square area, with 4 hours of casting time, exclusive of elemental conjuration. Otolukes, Freezing Spear. The sling stone-sized application of this spell has a 4-inch range if hurled by hand, otherwise as a sling bullet. All ranges by hand are short, otherwise treated as a slung missile. Use the grenade-like missiles table. It's back! The grenade-like missiles are back. To find where misses strike. Reincarnation. See the cleric spell of the same name for commentary on this spell. Lewis corrects me. People say it's Gias? Something like that. King Lem says it's Gish. I kind of doubt that it's Gish, King Lem. I just find that unlikely. Tyler says it rhymes with flesh. So, Gesh? That's very confusing. I'm going to have to look this up later. Spirit Rack. Only one specially illuminated vellum sheet may be prepared by the magic user and be in his or her possession and or control at the same time. This will be realized by any magic user as soon as a second is begun. It is not possible to have 2 such sheets naming the same being either, as the magic of the naming will be held within the first, but as soon as the second is made, it will go therein. Finally, no creature can make such a sheet naming itself. Stone to Flesh. In casting this spell upon a stone block, the magic user can cause the area of effect to be cylindrical, if so desired, so a passage can thus be made. Maximum diameter is 3 feet, minimum 1 foot. That's pretty gross. You want to get through a stone wall, turn it into flesh, and then cut your way through, maybe? Got some body horror vibes there. 7th level spells. Draw Midges, Instant Summons. Is that something backwards? Jim Ward? Oh, Jim Ward. If you write this backwards, it's Jim Ward, who was an early RPG writer. I think it's the guy who did Metamorphosis Alpha? Is that right? Someone correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of wizard names are things backwards if you spell them backwards. The special jewel used will have a magically created inscription naming the object that it will summon. The inscription is invisible and readable only by means of a read magic spell to all but the caster of the spell. Items contained within a Leomund's secret chest are not subject to the spell. Duo Dimension. See Appendix C, Random Monster Encounters, Astral and Ethereal Encounter Tables. BT's music channel says, I always thought Stone to Flesh is for when you get paralyzed by a Medusa. Yeah, I mean, that's the normal use for it, I would assume. But you got to ask, what's going to happen if you just cast it on a normal boulder? Someone says, most, if not all, the named spells are named after characters from Gaiax and Arneson's home games. Yeah, that's what I've heard. A lot of the original characters were friends of his, or his kids even got to name wizard spells frequently. Phase Door. This spell provides an escape route for high-level magic users, although phase spiders can see and use it with ease. A gem of seeing, and true sight will reveal the presence of a phase door. 8th level spells. Clone. Only humans, demi-humans, and humanoids may be cloned. Glass steel. The armor class of this substance is 1. 1, of course, being good, because the lower it was, the better it was. Monster summoning 6. For a list of monster summons, see Appendix M, summon monsters. Permanency. There is only a 5% chance of the spellcaster actually losing a point of constitution if the spell is cast upon a non-living thing. Serfton's spell immunity. Although it should be rather obvious, the spell works against nearly any form of enchantment/charm. Thus, forget hypnotism, ray of enfeeblement, it gets a +9. Antipathy, sympathy, confusion, mass suggestion, +7. Chaos, feeble mind, Otto's irresistible dance, +5. I'm not totally sure what the +5, +7, and +9 refer to. I'd probably have to read the original spell. Any other such spells can be adjudicated from the list in the player's handbook and herein. 9th level spells. Astral spell. See the cleric spell of the same name for commentary. Gate. See the cleric spell of the same name for commentary. Imprisonment. To find what number of creatures are freed, roll percentile dice to find the density of imprisoning creatures before rolling for the number. Multiply the first roll by the second, rounding any remainders to the nearest whole. Nice. We got some math. That's how you know you're playing AD&D. For each such creature freed, there is only a 10% chance that it will be in the area of the spellcaster. Use the random monster table of Appendix C for these, using D12 for level, any number of 9 or higher indicating a 9th level monster. Imprisonment, I think, is the one where it buries creatures beneath the earth and sort of like locks them away in hibernation, if I'm remembering that correctly. What's funny is that I'm pretty sure that this spell comes directly from Dying Earth. I think at the very end of the second Dying Earth book, The Eyes of the Overworld, Kujal uses this spell to try and imprison a wizard, but then it backfires on him. It's been a little while since I read that, but I remember reading it and then seeing the imprisonment spell and then realizing that Gary had taken it directly from the Dying Earth books, which are really great, by the way. At least the 2 middle ones are. Eyes of the Overworld and Kujal's Saga. I think I've said his name right. Those are both really fun. It's a full-on just murder hobo rogue type character going across this fantasy landscape, causing havoc and being very clever in the way that he uses magic items and spells to get out of situations. It's a lot of fun. Highly recommended. Prismatic Sphere. At the commencement of the spell, each color is shimmering, but each presents a successive layer, rather like an onion. The first must be brought down before the second can be affected, etc. Any creature passing through gets the effect of each and every color layer still existing. Time stop. Use a stopwatch or a silent count to time this. That's fun. The caster must be able to complete his or her acts before spell duration expires, or else he or she will likely be found in an embarrassing act. The use of a teleport spell just before the spell duration of the time stop expires is permissible. Illusionist spells. King Lem says he's a massive jerk. Oh yeah, Kujal is a total jerk. He is by any standard a really, really terrible person. But somehow that makes it even more entertaining because you're just watching this horrible person do terrible things and then try and get away with it. And most of the time he doesn't. Usually he gets his comeuppance, but every once in a while he manages to slither away to his next extremely selfish situation that he gets himself into. Ooh, so someone says time stop plus delayed blast fireball. Ooh, that's a fun one. That's a fun combo. Illusionist spells. First level spells. Gaze reflection. The creature that has its gaze reflected by this spell is entitled to a saving throw. Light. The spell can effectively blind an opponent, as noted in the commentary of the cleric spell of the same name. Second level spells. Detect magic. So a lot of these look like they are similar to what we've seen before. For commentary on this spell, see the cleric spell of the same name, not the magic user spell. Fog cloud. A gust of wind spell will dissipate the cloud in a single round. Invisibility. See the section on invisibility for commentary. Third level spells. Illusionary script. The cost of the lead-based ink is 100 to 400 gold pieces, plus the alchemist's profit of 100 gold pieces. Invisibility, 10-foot radius, see the invisibility section. Rope trick, see the magic user spell of the same name for commentary. 4th level spells, improved invisibility. Improved invisibility has the effect of moving considerations for detection of such invisibility downwards by 2 places compared to the other forms of invisibility. See invisibility for commentary. Phantasmal killer. If the affected individual is somehow brought to an unconscious state, the spell cannot do harm. 5th level spells. Shadow Door. The invisibly fleeing illusionist can be detected, see invisibility, but there must be active and concentrated attempts to do so. This will not simply be noticed in passing, as attention will be on the Shadow Door. Shadow Magic. The caster is actually tapping a power source, even though the majority of the spell is illusion, thus the 1 hit point of damage per level of the caster. 6th level spells. Conjure Animal. For a list of animals, see Appendix L, Conjured Animals. Demi-Shadow Magic. This spell allows the caster to tap a source of power as noted under Shadow Magic. My voice is starting to run out here. Where are we? 7th level spells. Astral Spell. See Appendix C, Random Monster Encounters, Astral and Ethereal Encounter Table, for a list of creatures which can be met. Vision. Consider this spell similar to a Contact Other Planes for handling purposes. Unrelated visions should contain some cryptic clues as to what the caster is seeking. Even on a 10 or better, be certain to make the vision as unclear and indirect as possible. That seems a little unfair. Gary is not a big fan of giving information to his players. He really wants to make them work for it. I'm kind of the reverse. I think the game tends to go better when you just give the players lots of information. And I just assume that players can get that stuff real quick, because that gives them stuff to work with. It gives them enough meat that they can, or I don't know what the right word is. It gives them stuff that they can plan off of. When you have information, you can make good choices. So you want to give players information. Final note. Remember that the reverse of any spell must be separately memorized, and that each requires special components. Okay, my voice is starting to run out here, so I think we're going to pause here it's about the 1 hour mark. We got through the entire spell section, and I think next time we're going to go on into the adventure. So that's a good place to stop. Adventures in the outdoors. We got rules for land adventures. We got rules for hexes, it looks like. So that's fun. We got some cool illustrations. Oh, yeah. So here's the overland rules, which are neat because most people don't really use those anymore. You got rules for flying and mounts, waterborne adventures, lots of stats for ships, because of course you got lots of stats for ships. All right, that looks fun. So that's a lot of interesting material that, again, like a lot of this stuff, is just kind of left out in modern D&D. Rules for going across oceans and land and air and so on. So it's neat to see how these things were worked out in early D&D, even if they were often way too complicated to really implement a lot of the time. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Hope you had a good time. I'm really enjoying going through this just because it's a lot of fun trying to read through Gary's dense prose and his liberal sprinkling of milieus and dwimmers here and there. So it's been a fun time. Thanks for joining me, everybody. I'll see you next time. Oh, and remember to check out on Wednesday, tomorrow, I will be releasing a new advice video with my tips on making traps. So keep an eye out for that. All right. See you next time.